My first question, I guess, is why this show is, sci-fi is a big thing right now on Netflix, but everywhere. So why is this show so special for you guys to be on it?
Why is this show so special? Well, the book was very compelling to me, so it's based on source material that's great, compelling, excellent. It was a wonderful read. I couldn't get enough of it. And so obviously Skydance and Netflix have their hands on a property that it has a proven audience. And for me, the people involved, both Lita, Skydance, Netflix, and the casting, was very exciting to me to be a part of. The story is strong, solid. It's something I don't think we've seen in television before. And I felt it was going to be deftly handled, and I wanted to be a part of it. And luckily, I got to.
Yeah, I find the ideas in the story and the world that he's created here fascinating. I'm just really interested. I play somebody who's 375 years old. I find that an interesting world to be in as an actor. And what does that mean, and how do you behave with other people, and what do you learn over a period of 375 years about yourself, about the world we live in? And as Kristin says, all the culprits of this extraordinary job have got extraordinary track records, and they are all the actors are great. The directors have been wonderful. The writing is top notch, and we're creating a whole world. I've been involved in another job. I did Rome for HBO, and that world that we created had a similar kind of sense of authenticity. And this isn't just guys on a spaceship. This is a world that we're creating. It's streets and families and
class systems and social systems, and
it's very full of context and full of that world, and that's always an interesting thing to step into as an actor.
Can you guys speak a little bit to the class system? I know that you guys are both Mets, so what's that like? I guess where do you draw from to be those characters as opposed to the people that we walked around the sets already, so we've seen how you all live versus how the 99% live. So
it's not that dissimilar though, is it?
No.
From the world we live in now. I mean, it really is. That thing of people living in a very rarefied world where they don't really interact with what's going on at the ground level. They're not terribly interested in partaking of that. They don't want to be down there. They live up at the top in this world of the Arium, which is right at the very, very, very top of the skyscrapers that we live in. And they don't, much like the super rich now, don't really get that involved with what's going on at the ground level.
And the part that for me was really interesting when I read the book was actually, obviously, it's tremendously interesting to play the entitlement of the 1% that we are in this. But for me, what was most interesting as a reader was the way that the 99% of the population were treated. So in terms of looking at this world that we're saying has a responsibility to perpetuate a physical life for people if their consciousness remains intact, then it's a really fascinating study right off the top of our pilot and right off the top of the book. How does that responsibility get executed and manifested? And so this whole notion of recycling bodies and how the authoritarian or the sort of institutionalized notion that the government or city owes its collective citizens the perpetuation of their physical lives, it's a recycling of bodies. So we see the pain that causes when the government itself doesn't care at all as to how a family's 7-year-old daughter is replaced. you see if you can afford it, that obviously affects how you're able to perpetuate your family's life and the quality of your own life. So it's almost just a sort of more macabre example of what could be perpetrated today, very evidently. And that was the part that I found really compelling, because it didn't feel like a huge stretch as to whether or not the things we've institutionalized, or the government we've institutionalized, whether they actually care for our well-being and to what extent that exists. It's pretty black and white in the book.
Did you read all three or just the first one?
I just read the first one. I want to read the rest, but I was like, okay, this is where we're starting.
Right, yeah.
So when you're playing a character that's hundreds of years old and has, lived through maybe, 10 or 15 different bodies, is that something, how do you project that when you're playing the character? Do you think about it consciously, or do you just, is that kind of
our characters haven't changed their bodies that many times, maybe because we live in cloned bodies. So we're not re-sleeved into different bodies. We are wealthy enough to have cloned versions of ourselves all over the planet, and then into off planets as well. So, and our stacks can be needle cast from one body to the next. So we sort of pretty much remain, did we not?
Well, I don't know. We didn't talk about this. So maybe our internal process, that makes perfect sense. I sit here and I hear the answer for the first time too, and I think, is that what we're doing? That's excellent. But I think yes. I think that we are probably the culmination of the best parts of what we've chosen to perpetuate over time. So even if we're cloned, there is that sort of, the fact that we have endless time on our hands to cultivate who we are and try various things out. What we don't ever see is how these clones the cells are put together. So we never really explore genetically how we've come to be. But I would imagine, since we've got enough more money than God, literally, we have chosen, I want this hair this time, and I want my eyes to be able to change with my mood, and I want that sort of ridiculous excess, at least for Miriam, I feel. There's a part of her that says, well, I want to make manifest the part of me that is most powerful. Whatever point in my life I have felt my most powerful, I want more of that. Plus, I want some of these other attributes, because she's got nothing but time to indulge in her physical form. So I don't know how many times we've come around, but I feel we have certainly fiddled with ourselves, so to speak.
Is Miriam as old as Bancroft?
She's younger, but to tell you the truth, I don't firmly know an exact age. It's gone back and forth between 200 to 120 it's sort of vacillated. Probably Lita would be able to give you a firmer answer, but I am younger than him.
I'm just trying to figure out how marriage functions when you live.
Well, this is one of the things that we explore.
Yeah.
But do you approach it?
It's very, very complicated.
Do you approach it as if you're playing a character who's 200 years old, or in a younger body, or?
What was that?
Do you approach it as if, are you thinking all the time, oh, this guy may look, my age, but he's actually 200, 300 years old? Or?
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that I meditated on, or thought about, meditation, but one of the things I thought about a lot is how do you, that thing of stringing a sentence together, of the fact that I think with great age you have a certain amount of wisdom, because the thing that for me, one of the things that life has taught me about mistakes that we make, children make the same mistakes over and over again, and eventually they learn not to do things. And if you, as a grown man, continue to make those same mistakes, you eventually learn how to take a different path. And of course, over a period of 300 years, 375 years, you are able, the words that you choose become very, very deliberate. There is no fact on the way that you speak. So, actually, funny enough, one of the things that I talked to Lita about was the way Obama spoke. That very precise, a sentence, so that it was that he chose precisely the right words. Absolutely not the way our president.
And that's something that you came up with and talked with the director and the writer
leader about it a lot right at the beginning. Yeah. I think that he doesn't. That he has a certain amount of wisdom, and that he does a huge amount of wisdom in the sense that he knows exactly what to say at the right time, and he's incredibly manipulative, obviously, because he's been around the block.
James, background is like a man of contrast. He can be very ruthless but very moral at the same time. How was it to crack into his personality? Did you get to talk with the author a little bit more about him?
I haven't spoken to the author at all, the author of the book, but as I said, we did speak to the leader a great deal. It's very complicated. It's very complicated. I don't want to give too much away because there is a scene that he has with Kovac where he explains a great deal about the relationship between him and his wife and the veneration he feels for her, but that also means that there are certain things he can't do with her anymore that he would like to. So on the one hand, he has great wisdom, but on the other hand, he can be very base as well.
I know that the entire plot is, you guys have very important things to do, and you're trying to decide if you committed suicide or were murdered, and that's the basis. But is there any chance of, like, where the episodes get to breathe, we see what does a 300-year-old person do every day? Like, you were talking about unlimited time, so it's not like you're like, gotta get up, gotta have coffee, gotta keep going.
You sort of do. In a more practical way, I think you have a glimpse of it with your character. Certainly, with Lawrence, I think we do. Like, for example, when you're administering. But with Miriam, it all sort of osmosis for me in just her appearance. That she has obviously got nothing but time and isn't the kind of woman who says, well, now that's right, I've got to put this time to good use. Her good use is, how elaborately shall I dress today? And, I mean, there was a moment in the very beginning where I thought, back in history there were the ceramic nail protectors in the Chinese dynasties, and they were really long, like they were crazy long, because it denoted wealth and that the person didn't work. And I actually thought, will Miriam have big, long, because she doesn't do anything, really, So that, to me, typifies what she does. She's had children, many, many children, and probably doesn't even sort of oversee the running of their household anymore. It's just a question of her power really comes from the way her physical presence is.
So there's no inner life where she's my life is so there's like you were talking about Chinese culture, there was any aristocratic culture, there was women have very little to actually do.
That's right.
And there's a lot of angst almost there about what is the point of my day-to-day existence. So she has completely subsumed that and turned it into a kabuki theater almost with her.
Very much.
Yeah.
And also I feel absolutely, it's really that's so well put, because I have actually found it difficult playing her because she is so much a performance. Everything about her is a performance. So I feel like I'm performing, and then I go home and I think, was that really awful? Because I feel like I'm performing, but she really is performing. I think that there's almost nothing authentic anymore about her. She's so subsumed by his power and trying to feed off the sort of drip, the crumbs that come off of him, that she's constantly play acting, constantly, and also has commodified herself sexually, which I think is the other thing. She has endless time to just pleasure stack until it's no longer pleasurable, but she's lost the knowledge of whether or not excess is. Where is the edge of excess? She doesn't know. So I think it's just constant excess.
I think one of the things that we found interesting to talk about and think about on this is the natural rhythm of life. Born, you're a child, you go to college, work for 50 years, retire, you fall into a grave. And if you don't have that natural rhythm of life, what does that mean? whether it may just continue on and on and on, and how corrupting that would be. And I think that's probably, when it comes down to it, the moral of the story is that by living forever, you do away with God, because you are the gods now. That the corrupting influence of that age, and the fact that there is now no natural rhythm to your life, that it will poison your soul.
Yeah, the entitlement is really quite saddening. Really, that's what I feel mostly with them, is the degree of entitlement has been concretized. Like there is this genuine belief that everything is justifiably theirs, including other people's lives.
Yeah.
And so there's not even a moment of doubt ever, certainly not from Miriam. But I also feel I just personally feel so sad. I just feel so sad.
Yeah. And there's nothing to really live for the Mets, right? That's what you're saying, because when you know you're going to die, or when you have it in your existence that at some point you're going to die and you don't even know when, then things become a priority. Living becomes a priority. Getting stuff done becomes a priority.
Getting stuff done.
Yeah.
Before you die. But if you're not going to die,
doesn't matter.
What's the point?
It doesn't matter. Why finish that novel? You have forever.
You are really not in a hurry.
Yeah, exactly.
And sci-fi is known for these highly concept things, world buildings, words even. How is your relationship with science fiction?
I'm a huge fan. I mean, I grew up watching sci-fi all my life. Star Wars, Star Trek, it didn't matter. Battlestar. Oh, hey. The best one too. Yeah, see, Empire. I'm one of those people that can watch that stuff over and over again. And I'm a fanboy. I collected comics when I was a complete nerd. So something like this, where I'm running around with laser guns and beaming places, is my dream.
So you're kind of wet dream right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wake up every day with a mess. Yes. I was like, oh.
The book deals a lot with religious aspect of society. Can you explain a bit how it's going to work on the show as well?
Just so I understand, did you say the religious aspect? That's sort of in your
I don't think it is it?
Come on.
Well, I mean, it's only in the sense that as I said, they don't believe in God, because they know that it doesn't. They don't believe he exists. They don't believe anything like that exists. But they are the gods now. And so yes, there is a religious aspect with the whole 635 thing, and the people being that there are certainly still religions on Earth at this time. And that's pretty much.
Well, plot point wise, for example, in this case, it uses Catholicism as the limit. So as we just discussed in the Mets, where there's almost no limits, therefore they believe they have complete control over their destiny. There's no reason to, as almost all civilizations have, devise spirituality or religiosity that helps ease stress and control one's...
And base the idea of sin, that you will pay for sin in the life hereafter.
That's right.
If there is no life hereafter, then you
Why?
tell me worry about sin.
Yeah.
However, in the book, Catholicism, anyone that is still self-identifies as a Catholic, has decided they don't want their consciousness to be accessed once they die. And that is a pivotal and very important both criminal and moral aspect to the story. And it does weave into our lives. It's sort of one way that the ground sort of trickles up to give us our comeuppance, actually, ultimately.
And it's an interesting, I think, sort of observation about the holding on to religion as technology sort of advances just for regular human beings. Like we're, in our present lifetime, we're not sort of questioning what the sun is anymore. We're not questioning why it comes up or goes down. We have a knowledge of the universe that is way ahead of what was happening 2,000 years ago. So now the religions are changing as we evolve our knowledge of life. So as James was saying, once you've conquered life, you have nothing to live for. You
So it's
have
very
actually
interesting
conquered God.
to see that NASA has been funding studies into what will happen when life is found on other planets, and what that means for organized religions on Earth.
Oh, they'll just, like he was saying, they'll just shift them until like incorporate it in somehow.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
But your character, Elliot, is kind of a minor character in the book, and they had to expand your role for the show. And you have a daughter. How old is she? We saw your set and everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She's in her late teens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like an actual child.
No.
But my question's still relevant, which is because you have a child and it's your daughter and she's has no body and she's trapped. Like, what is that like? Because I'm a parent. Like that whole like, what's the, I guess the moral center there? Like you want to bring her back because you miss her, but like.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess you're not neo-Catholic then.
No, absolutely not. And that's the interesting thing, because we get into, I think, one of the central tenets of Altered Carbon is what do we love in each other? Is there something inside? Is the outside different from the inside? Personally, I think, and I'm not saying I'm right about this, I don't think there's any difference. So if you bring back somebody in a completely different body that you've had in a completely different experience with, even if they have the same memories and so forth, it's not the person, right? It's not her hair, it's not the way she smells, it's not the way she talks. And so it's interesting to try to figure out how to negotiate that, because even though the technology in this has gone to where we can switch bodies and so forth, human beings haven't evolved to be able to sort of incorporate that into our consciousness. So is that your daughter, even if she's in a completely different body, even if she's in a man's body or an old woman's body? Even she has the same exact experiences and all the memories and she remembers you, is it her? And I think that even, in our present day society, even when cosmetic changes are made, somebody dyes their hair, your girlfriend cuts her hair, and you go, oh, hey. You know what I mean? It's not like she's wildly different, but there's something different now that suddenly it makes it a different person, only slightly. So now imagine if you've completely swapped a body. That's what I think is fascinating about the entirety of Altered Carbon. The central question of it is, who are we? The body, I think, is as important as whatever we think is the inside.
So do those people at the top, are they basically losing their humanity through the cloning process and immortality, and everyone at a lower level is basically the morality center? Are they the ones holding everything together?
If we're boiling it down, it feels very much. It feels very much like that. The thing is, I don't think up above that everyone, even though what we're displaying and playing with and what has been glamorized is that they seem to have lost their morality. I would say yes, but I think it's complicated. I don't think it started that way, and I don't think it means that they can't find their way back. But I think that once one has been corrupted, here's what I feel like it is when you have this really intense shadow part of yourself that grew as a coping mechanism. Like maybe it's hypervigilance because you grew up with an alcoholic parent, and so you're really conscious of your environment, so you can control everything and see 5 steps down the way just to be able to control the mood of whoever's in charge of your household. Later, you might have an awesome memory and pay really close attention to the things that are going on in your friends' lives and really enjoy fruitful relationships. Why? Because when you grew up, you had this way of paying attention. So I feel like that there's near enemies to everything. So, for example, Miriam loves her children, but that love has also trapped them and has also enabled them, and she has no boundaries. It's become boundaryless. So I think it's difficult to play them only as one thing, but certainly if we're looking at the story and saying that down below there is a richer life where authenticity and honesty is present, then yes, I would say that is a dichotomy certainly in the story.
Is there time for one more question?
I would say the book is I'm reading it at the moment. It's a fantastic book. It's quite hard-edged in the way it depicts violence, sexuality, some of the language.
Yeah.
Is this adaptation retaining all of that as much as you can on?
Well, I do have to say, although I don't know. Well, I think Richard Morton was on set, and he was thrilled with one particularly hard-edged line that I did deliver in a sex scene, and he said, "I'm so happy because that's what Miriam actually said," and I was like, yes. Yes, and I was happy that he was happy, because you're right, the flavor of the book that's very much the flavor of the book, and I think
Oh, yeah.
Were you guys surprised by the scope of, of the whole production? Like how big it is?
Yeah.
the street, I was like, what?
Yeah. When you see it lit with all the extras walking around, it's striking.
Yeah.
I've worked on some great stuff, whatever, but this is like something completely different. Like, it's when you have like 400 extras there, it's unbelievable.
I know you said one more question, but both of you talked about your children a little bit. You said you trap them, which makes me, are you physically trapped like in child bodies? And also you own your daughter's stack. So how does that work with minor children in the future? Like, do you own, like, you own the IP of your children until they're 18? Like, how does that work?
We kept one of my children, Isaac, we have kept in the body of, how old is he?
He's like 20.
Like 20, but
Yeah.
he's in real
He's
life,
supposed to
he'd
be-
be 100,
Well, something like that, yeah.
120, but I've kept him young.
So that they're kind of in keeping with our ages. They reflect our ages almost.
Yeah.
So and also to infantilize them.
And to
some extent.
infantilize them
Yeah.
and to control them and,
Yeah.
to make them do what we want them to do.
I'm sure that won't blow up in your face at all.
Well, yeah. Well, you'll see.